Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Kate Stillman with the Well Pro Show, and I'm here with Neil Markey, and his site is beckleyretreats.com. And what's I think super fascinating about you, Neil, is just your background, the way you came into the wellness. And in terms of like what we do at Wellness Pro Academy, you're one of our like sub avatars, which is like psychedelic retreat leaders actually is. So it was interesting to get, you guys' outreach to come on the show. And so I'd love to really dive into your background and then your process with how you're guiding people through, and you've indicated that like you work with not really like high risk populations, but more with wellness, like people that are already pretty well and looking to maybe what we would say is like be on their growth path or on more of like an evolutionary trajectory. So will you start just by telling us a little bit about your background as a U.S. Army Special Ops captain? And what's fascinating is I've actually been guided through psychedelic experiences with someone who's also U.S. Army Special Ops. So I'm like, is this trending?
I wonder, it is kind of. It's fascinating. And I think that that special operations community, once they've gone and done enough of their own work, actually end up being amazing facilitators. I think sometimes anybody that's really been through really challenging experiences has a understanding and a level of empathy that is hard to kind of do without those experiences. Yeah, I think so many veterans want purpose and meaning and find that in this field, and so they're really motivated to share, and so yeah. But I can tell you a bit about how I got to where I am now, if that's helpful.
Yeah, I think so. And it does make sense. It's like, to me that, there's people who've lived through intense experiences and done a lot of team building and leadership skill building are naturally more able to escort people into what I would call a depth journey, right? Where you're going into the unknown, you're going into parts of the subconscious or unconscious, and someone that can really hold the container for other people to fall apart and be fallen apart. I can see how Army Special Ops training would be very useful for that.
Yeah, for sure. I usually kind of start my story in undergrad. I was studying math, thinking I was going to go do math nerd stuff, and then September 11th happened, and that changed everything for me. I shortly after joined the officer program at Maryland and thought I was doing the right thing. And by the time I got through school and then training and then to my unit, we had learned that this weapons of mass destruction narrative was wildly wrong, if you remember that.
Yes.
But I had already committed, and so I went to Iraq once as an infantry officer. I was fortunate. I missed the worst of Iraq. I was there in 07. 05, 06 were really tough years. I had a chance to go try out for the special operations community. I went to the Ranger Regiment, which is a small direct action mission unit that was doing the night raids. And I went to Afghanistan twice with them. And part of me was so proud to be there. Leroy Petrie was a sergeant that got the Medal of Honor when I was there. His locker was right next to mine.
Wow.
Obama was talking about the missions that we were doing on the news. It was Pat Tillman's old battalion. Pat Tillman was the Arizona Cardinal professional football player that was killed a couple years before I got there, but it was this kind of larger than life organization. I was so thankful to be there, and it was wildly traumatic. I mean, now looking back, everybody in that unit had some level of PTSD. So it's hard to put into words like how thick it was. And I got out in 2012 and went to graduate school. I went to Columbia University for business and international affairs, and so by some measures was doing well, was at a good school and like was showing up, but then by a lot of measures was like really struggling. I mean, I was isolating a bit. I was having a lot of anger. I remember being so mad at my peers because no one even cared that there was a war going on. Mm-hmm. Everybody else had just been living their lives. Now I don't hold that against anybody. I mean, but at the time that was really tough for me. And then I tried anti-anxiety medications. I tried sleeping pills, all these different things to try and, fix what I was feeling, and then kind of stumbled into this mindfulness for business leaders class that was being taught by a guy by the name of Hong Nguyen, who was doing his PhD at Columbia. And I think he was one of the first people that could sense what was going on with me, and he started inviting me on these long form meditation programs, and I started going, and that was a pivot point for me. And then through that same network, I had the chance to have some professionally facilitated psychedelic experiences. For me, in some ways, it felt like those were accelerating or accentuating what I was trying to do with meditation.
Yeah.
I still really believe that now, and so that was kind of the beginning, and then there's been 12, 13 years between now and then, but maybe I'll pause there for a second. That was kind of my first introduction to this work, was in my transition out of the service.
Yeah. Yeah, we have like somewhat similar parallels, where I probably experimented a lot more with psychedelics before going and doing like deep dives into meditation. Are you familiar with the work of Terence McKenna?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, right. It's like I find that his emphasis on that, like you can get to certain experiences faster with plant medicines and maybe more reliably. And I know, coming from a background in yoga and Ayurvedic medicine and meditation, that is, that philosophy is very much rejected, especially in Enlightenment communities. But I have found, like you, that it's often, I would say, more reliable or more predictable in terms of, and in terms of like the time commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Can be, for all those factors, I think, for people that have maybe just really gone to the cushion or the mat and don't really know that side of it, that it might be surprising to experiment.
There's an interesting documentary called Descending the Mountain, where they gave psychedelics to long-term meditators, and it's worth watching for those that are curious. I mean, I think one thing is for sure, these plants and psychedelics are not for people that don't want to use them. And so if people don't think it aligns with their path, that's great. That to each their own. But I think for me personally, and for many people I know, so long as they're used in the right way, there's tremendous value here. And I think that particularly the natural ones, maybe they were put on this earth for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as healers, like the more we're studying the research between microbiome and the natural psychedelic plant medicines, and how much they can change a dysbiotic state into a eubiotic state, that there's so much that we don't know. There's so much that we don't really know between the gut-brain connection. Like there are some good studies, aggregate studies on like the silo-biome and figuring out the connection between how is a fungal and antifungal at the level of psychedelics. Like there's just so much, I think, just as wellness pros who want to explore. And when I hit resist, when I find people are resistant to it, I often think that it's like you don't know what you don't know, and those of us that really need to keep a lid on it and, live a much more controlled life and stay within a box, like that the plant medicines can actually have the most to offer us in terms of broadening our experience. I love the work of Dave Gray and liminal thinking, how he looks at this is like your experience, and your experience like lies on this massive plane of the unknown. But so like our experience of the known is so small, and those of us that are living in such a, controlled or living as the expert, often we get in our own way. And to me, that's so much where I have found, both with clients and myself, that the teachings from the plant medicines, you can't remain in the known.
Yeah, I agree. A guy that I've known for quite some time leads a nonprofit called the Veterans Path, and they teach meditation to transitioning service members, and taught it to thousands, and they would do cohorts of like 15 to 20 veterans and teach them meditation, and then he would check in with these veterans 6 months later, and he said if he had one or two veterans that were still practicing meditation, he'd be really excited. That's two people whose lives will change, and we know that meditation is so profound. It's just like really hard to get people to adopt it as a habit, because you don't experience the benefits for like quite some time. It takes a lot of discipline. It's really hard to explain to someone kind of like what the benefit is. It's kind of these things that are a little beyond words, sometimes. Well, now, because the veteran community is using psychedelics in clinical environments and then in Mexico, and it's kind of happening all in our community, he has intentionally tried to find veterans that had recently had one of these experiences and then put them in a cohort. And he said it's almost flipped. He said he'll go 6 months later and talk to veterans, and like 15 of them are now disciplined in doing meditations. It does something, there's some complementary benefit to doing these together, and a big part of the reason why the program we have is structured the way it is. Yeah, if nothing else, if through these programs people develop a meditation habit, I'm super excited.
Yeah.
That's a win.
Yeah, it seems like the wanting to introspect and see what else is there besides the, just the waking state, linear mind is part of what gets unlocked. And that makes sense to me, that like then there's traction because there's curiosity. Because I think, so much of it's like, oh, I need to meditate because I have anxiety. But it's like, yeah, but how are you gonna like get that first big unlock? How are you gonna crack the nut? Because it's you're not gonna, if you're anxious and you're coming to the cushion to meditate, it's gonna be really, I mean, pranayama is huge. Like, because pranayama or like breathing practices are gonna help a lot. So like people that are anxious are coming, have, a lot of past trauma, PTSD, right? It's like, gosh, if you don't crack that nut, like meditation, I've seen it aggravate.
Yeah, there's more research around this too.
Okay, so let's talk about the process that you guys are doing at Beckley Retreats. I just had a friend over who is also sort of like under the radar leading some psychedelic experiences, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna talk to this guy and this is what they do, and what should I ask him? And she's like, process.
Was she familiar with us or our organization?
No, but she is, familiar with, I would say with just the overall, like where plant medicines fit in with the spiritual practice and journey and using them. She and I are both very curious about rites of passage, like bringing back rites of passage at different stages of life, right? So, and that's in the yogic system, like there's a lot more around ritual with stage of life transitions than there is in Western culture. 100%. So to me, it's like kind of a natural fit in Western culture to have, a planned rite of passage type, very intentional experience to allow one phase of life to have some closure.
Yes.
Right, and then the next door to open within a container.
Yes, I completely agree. And many of our guests that are coming down are in a transition period and want to like honor what has been, come to terms with it, but then want to like step into a new way of being.
Yeah.
And I think these types of programs are great for things like that. Other reasons our guests come down is, they just want to, they're in that kind of mechanical rat race. They don't feel like they're present with their families. They want to, experience more of the magic of life, be more in awe more often, be more present with their children, feel gratitude more often. And like our mind can just get a little overactive, and then it kind of turns off some of those emotions that are really part of being human. And so these experiences can kind of help get that more in balance. And we have lots of people come down that are just, they want to develop more of a spiritual connection, or they want to be better leaders and develop more empathy. So, I think our programs are really good for people that are doing well, high functioning. Most of our attendees are quite accomplished professionals, and they're looking to kind of go to the next level of connectedness. And then the structure of our program is a preparation period experience and a immersion experience, and then an integration portion. We would call our program more of like an integrative health program. The psilocybin mushrooms are part of it. The mystical experience is a big part of it. But we really, at the beginning, said, what do we need to give people to really thrive and make change that sticks? And what we knew was from, we come from the Beckley Foundation, so our team and the folks around us has been in this space for quite some time. We knew that get a lot of benefit from the mystical experience, but oftentimes if people just go back to their normal way of life without any habit change, you're going to revert. You're going to go back to the norm, because by the time you're early adult, a lot of that habit is well ingrained, and so you need to make conscious effort to really make shifts that'll last. And so we looked at adult learning, we looked at habit change science, we looked at functional health, we looked at what was happening in different indigenous communities around the world, and have quite meaningful partnerships with quite a few of them, and said, what would a program look like, that was kind of tailored for where the Western mindset is, where people are. And so in the prep, we're teaching meditation, we're teaching mindful movement, we're teaching breathwork exercises. There's some kind of basic Western psychotherapy tools, self-reflection, getting clear on why you're coming, practical exercises. And then the group gets to meet digitally on a Zoom a couple times, so they get to meet the facilitators, and they get to meet the other people of the cohort. So it's like 15 to 18 guests. And so we know from adult learning and habit change science that if you can create that good group positive dynamic, sometimes people are more likely to show up for others than themselves. And so we start that early. And then we do the programs on beautiful estates. So it's a place where people can be in awe of nature. They're away from everything. We do, everything that we do is fully legal, fully above board. We're insured. And so it limits the places where we can do it. But we do it in Jamaica in the Netherlands. Are our two primary locations. And then when we're on site for 5 nights, we're doing a lot of the practices that we taught in the prep, but now we're doing them together in nature. So morning meditations, breath work, and then we do 2 psilocybin sessions. Those are on day 2 and day 4, and those are done in a group format. And we're trying to kind of blend ancient wisdom and some of the tradition with having modern science and high-level safety protocols. So we're trying to find this middle path, but our experiences are done in a group, which is how you would oftentimes see them traditionally. And then, we play live music. It's like a very beautiful presentation of this work. It's like very artful. All of our programs are led by either a medical doctor or a psychotherapist. Important to note, they're not operating in their medical capacity because we're not diagnosing or treating anything, but they have that formal training. And then, I think we have some of the best facilitators out there because of the Beckley name. We've been able to be very selective. We pay really well. That's all part of our model because we know that the facilitation is a big part of the experience. So you really, for people that are interested in this, that's where I would ask the most questions, Who is this individual or individuals? What's their background? What's their training? How many of these have they done? It's really important to get that right, the set and the setting and the facilitation. And then, we're eating really beautiful food that's from the earth. And in Jamaica, it's Jamaican food. In the Netherlands, it's culturally appropriate cuisine there. And then there's time to just be. You can go to the beach in Jamaica or just be in the forest in the Netherlands, and there's kind of group integration work. And then at the end of the program, everyone goes home, and then we do 6 weeks of digital integration. And most people do really well just with the group sessions and the access to our modules and practical exercises. We're really emphasizing, okay, this is the window. We know from research that this window of neuroplasticity is a couple weeks, a few weeks, and so there's this increased potentiality for change. And so if you're really disciplined and you commit to getting in nature more and you commit to making some positive diet changes and you commit to meditations, it looks like it's more likely to stick. And so we're really thoughtful on how we kind of get the group to do that together. And then for some people that come through, they have things that are more specific or more personal and they want to go a little deeper. So we offer one-on-one sessions for folks that need to do that. But that's kind of the overall structure of the program that we offer.
Amazing. Yeah. So it seems so, I would say, like cultivated and safe, especially for people who have less experience or who have a lot of maybe fear or trepidation around really going into their psyche. That way it seems like really well designed for.
I think so. I mean, I'm wildly biased, obviously, but we spent a lot of time and resource building it, and then we've been iterating it over the years. We've had near 1,000 guests at this point, and we're partnered with researchers from Yale and Johns Hopkins, and we're looking at the outcome data, and we're taking a very professional, thoughtful approach to this work that had always kind of been on the underground in the shadows, and like saying, no, let's bring it above board. Let's talk about the benefits, but let's talk about also people that have challenging experiences, and let's just be open book so that adults can make the most informed decision they possibly can about whether they want to try something like this.
Yeah. So the Beckley Foundation, so it's one of the few organizations in the world that initiates and directs scientific research into cannabis and psychedelics. You guys have over 70 papers, right? What is some of, for people who are not at all familiar with the body of research, what are, I would say, some of the maybe more surprising or just like downright things people should know in 2025 about both cannabis and psychedelics, or the category of plant medicines that are known as the entheogens, or these in-spirit plants that have been used by humanity for as long as we can figure out, it seems like.
Yeah, they seem to have a Long history. The Beckley Foundation was started by this woman by the name of Amanda Fielding, who she just passed 2 weeks ago. Extraordinary human being. So she's been working on this for 60 years, and she started the Beckley Foundation in 1998, and she just knew that these plants could help people. And so she rallied some of the world's leading researchers and philanthropists, and then, was really driving a lot of the research. And she was trying to be objective and see, is there benefit here? It's still a little bit taboo for us to be talking about these things, but it's nothing like it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I have just such respect for her, because a lot of the world thought she was out of her mind. Now the world is like, okay, there's something here. And what have we learned? Well, that, it's not for everyone, it's not for everything, but for some desired outcomes and some indications, it's nearly unbelievably positive. And so some of my favorite use cases is end of life. So most people have a tremendous amount of anxiety end of life. There's studies now that show 1 to 2 of these psilocybin sessions completely dissolve the anxiety related to end of life. And what a gift. And we've had cancer patients come down on our programs, and we've seen it. And, I guess, what else have we learned? Well, we know for psilocybin that it's non-toxic, it's neuroregenerative, so it looks like it helps the brain. If you look at fMRIs, when someone's under psilocybin, parts of the brain that used to not light up, and then connections between parts of the brains that maybe didn't light up as much light up more. So the brain is actually working better, so it looks like it actually improves cognitive function. It's not toxic to the body, many of the pharmaceuticals we use. So, there's still risks, and we can talk about those, but if you mitigate those risks and you make sure you're doing all the right things and properly screening and stuff, in my personal opinion, the risk profile is actually quite low relative to pharmaceuticals or driving late at night on a highway or hiking in the mountains, and compared to the incredibly positive feedback from many. 88% of our guests say that their experience with us was one of or the most meaningful experience of their life.
Yeah.
So there's really something there.
There's really something there.
There's really something there.
In yoga, there's a teaching in the Yoga Sutras on the 5 kleshas, or it's kind of like the 5. Klesha means stain, and it's the way that the mind gets trapped. The idea is if you're wearing a beautiful white shirt and you spill some beet juice on it, that where everybody's attention goes is to the stain, and you miss the whole shirt. So it's where the mind gets trapped, right? Is these stains, and it. The more that, in Primal Habits, I write a lot about the taboo and these habits that mammalian habits or primal habits or humans as primates that we had before agriculture. So before we were living in a power over. Agriculture helped organize power because you could store food, right? So you could store power in the form of food over. So a lot of the teachings changed with agriculture. A lot of what we knew as what in yoga is called svadhyaya, or self-wisdom. Sva, self-jya is to know. So the self-wisdom starts to get really, I would say, downgraded or downplayed, or even we have so much trauma in our birthing process, our early childhood rearing process, that we are kind of severing that innate wisdom of the primal habit from just our primate perspective. But in yoga, you have these codified teachings, some of which retain quite a bit of that primal wisdom. And then the 5 kleshas, avidya is the biggest one, which is this disconnect from wisdom. So is disconnect or not, and vid is that wisdom. That there's these 4 other kleshas, and abhinavesha is one of them, and that's fear of death. So it's very much connected to that disconnect from primal, or that disconnect from this naturally occurring, right? This is to me, it's our birthright is to not have fear of death.
Yes.
Right? And so as we trip, or as we go into an experience, and then that pivots or overcomes, it's this is, wow, what else am I not afraid of? What other risks could I have taken in alignment with svadhyaya, in alignment with my own inner wisdom? And some of my sometimes I kind of get like a little go head to head with this like scientism age. We've just taken so much away from self-validation, and it's like 3 tips for from science. It's like, well, a lot of this stuff to me, it's like, well, just this is just our birthright, like that we know what to do. We know to walk and run and crawl and hang and swing and play, and and we know to live and not be so this idea of like clinging onto that abhinavesha. I was actually 2 stories. I want to tell about my dad and like microbiome damage and using psilocybin to recover it, and another is with my friend was dying like literally 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, and I was helping her 17-year-old. We're like around the deathbed, and no one seems to know that she's dying except for me. She's clearly dying. Science isn't going to save her. Medicine, she's dying. And so like, let's attune to that energy, because it's magic. Like, we're crossing a threshold together. It's beautiful. We're in the liminal space. Birth and death are like right there in the liminal space. And so I'm helping her 17-year-old, and I have a 17-year-old, and they're friends. And she's holding her mom's hand, and I'm helping her with the fear. I'm helping her ground her mother's fear of death energy through her feet, right? And I'm just showing her how to do it with pranayama and with using her mind to move energy. And it just was so powerful. At one point, she's asked me, like, am I doing it right? I'm like, you know. And then she was able to be so present with, like, at 17 like the mom couldn't really, I don't think, get to that non-fear place, but the daughter could. And that shift in like just the epigenetics and the generational transition, like we can do this for each other. Like we can do this in communion, we can do this in community.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm super supportive of the clinic work and the one-on-one work, and I always think that will be there and has its place. And I'm really proud of what we're doing. Everything's in groups, and I think that's part of the magic, these types of experiences in groups. And a lot of what we're correcting for is the disconnection because of the transactional nature of the way we live our lives now, and so I think people would get a lot out of these programs even without the psilocybin, frankly, just to sit and witness others and hear and realize maybe for the first time in a while that we're all in this together, and everybody's got a story, and everybody's got pain, and everybody's struggling, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's what we do at Club Thrive Global. So I've been in this wellness field for 25 years. And what I found early on is that group transformation trumps one-on-one consultation. Like, just no comparison.
And it's just, team kind of feel.
Yeah, so what we do at Wellness Pro Academy is we help other wellness pros shift into the club model, right? Because it's like, this is where the transformation lives. It's in repair, like you're right, like it's getting out of transactional and into the transformational. Yeah.
And it's all relational. So it's how you relate to self, but then so much of life is how you relate to other human beings. So practicing that, or kind of becoming more aware of that with yourself and others, and that relationship with self and nature, it's all in that feedback loop where it is.
Yeah, so let's talk about the chronic pain study, that this potential analgesic effect of psychedelics on select chronic pain conditions. I find both this interesting for the macrodose and the microdose perspective. And I've had a number of doctors and research scientists on the podcast really talking about, this mystery of chronic pain, and how, in many studies with like MRIs and placebo effects and placebo surgeries, et cetera, it's like this whole idea of like, what is going on in this like very overactive nervous system pathway with chronic pain, and how are psychedelics being used to potentially change what's going on in the brain and the brainwave state.
Yeah, and there's a really cool nonprofit organization out there that's studying this really deeply, called Cluster Busters for chronic pain. But a lot of it, I think, is working on similar things to meditation. And so there's a lot of meditation research around chronic pain, and I think what they've found is that there's a component of pain that is mechanical, or it's real. It's inflammation, it's something that's damaged. But then there's also a big component of pain that is like the relationship to the pain. And so in meditation, when you are being taught how to deal with chronic pain, most people are in this kind of, they're averting it, they're looking away from it, they're trying to The pain in the body is trying to get your attention because it wants you to do something about it. That's kind of the whole point of the pain, is to let you know there's something there, and then you try and figure out if there's something that can fix it. But if you're in this resistance, then the body's not getting that feedback loop, so it's going to keep getting louder and louder and louder. And what we've seen in meditation studies is if you actually take your awareness and you put it right there and you lean into the pain, that the pain will dissipate because you've connected your awareness with the pain, and so the pain has done the job and you're paying attention to it, and it'll say, okay, the body's, getting the information that it needs. And so that can really help people. And so something similar is happening when we do these experiences. You're getting heightened sensitivity to many different things. Pain can be one of them. And so it's helping kind of redo that loop. And then a lot of pain is at least exacerbated by the central nervous system being in a more sensitive, kind of sympathetic dominant state. Mm-hmm. So you're just on alert. So everything is more sensitive and, similar to meditation, sleep, moving the body. If you can get the central nervous system to settle down, and then you can get it more in the parasympathetic state, then inflammation will go down, and then a lot of that pain can go away. The body can heal itself if it's in a state, if it's in the right state for healing. But most of us, myself included, for many, many, many years, literally aren't getting into that state where the body's going in and trying to fix these problems because it's so out of whack.
Well, right, and it's like, even I would say with this acceleration of information where we're so in this reactive pattern, and there's this experience of like time going faster, and there's not enough time, right? Where we're all, and then just like sort of the fear, which was, I'd say, like we had the big thing with COVID, and now the big thing with AI, and it's like, it's just on and on. And it doesn't seem, at least with it's like the chronic disease indicators are not decreasing. Like the levels of chronic inflammation of the global population are increasing.
Yes.
Right? And then the increase in pharmaceuticals, not just in the United States, but around the globe, it's still increasing. We're still medicating earlier and earlier. So like despite this little tiny fringe group of which seems huge when you're in it. Like when you're in wellness, it's like everyone you know is in wellness, like everyone's doing it. And then, you just drive like 30 miles, elsewhere, and you're like, oh wait, no, I'm in a food desert again. I'm in a wellness desert again. There aren't healers on every corner. Like this is a totally different state to be in, and we're just being bathed in this kind of crazy pharmaceutical toxic food.
Yep.
Right, go culture. So if we are having trouble accessing consciousness that's accessing the healing potential of our physiology, it's like, yep. Even those of us that are really good at it are having a hard time.
Yes, very much so.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your own journey with gaining, just a foothold in healing practices from, more of a conventional.
Yeah, sure.
place?
So, 13 years ago when I started grad school, then I got into meditation, and the first kind of technique I learned was mindfulness-based stress reduction by Jon Kabat-Zinn, which I really love, because at the time I wasn't looking for spirituality, I just wanted to feel better. Mm-hmm. And he was a doctor from University of Massachusetts that studied in the East, saw that there was all this potential, and was like, but maybe we can take out some of the woo of it so it can be studied in a medical environment. So for me, it was super pragmatic and practical, and I didn't have to believe anything. I just had to sit and practice being present. And then from there, I went on a lot of different long-form meditation programs, long-form wellness programs. Started realizing how much different I felt if I was spending time in nature. Started realizing, that we're electromagnetic beings, and we have a current, and that current changes based on our proximity to nature. I started kind of researching that more and learned. Then I finished school and did a teacher certification in meditation at Jefferson University. At that point was doing really well. I was living back in my hometown, so had good community, had purposeful work, wasn't drinking alcohol, had always been a pretty good eater because of my time in the service, and had been focused on fitness, but had even gotten more committed to that, and low inflammation, low preservative, like all natural foods, and was doing great. And then I had a bit of a pivot. I ended up taking this job at McKinsey & Company, which is a consultancy. If I'm honest, when I look back, that's kind of the point where maybe I started going backsliding a little bit. And I think now...
Was that because of the culture there? Like just that?
It's just this like super competitive, super fast-paced environment. And so then I think I had like all the tools and I had the awareness, but then I realized, after a few years of being there and then in the corporate world, I realized like how much environment matters and how much those close relationship matters. And like, you've got to be a saint to be in some of these environments and kind of stay grounded and take good care of yourself because, it's just environment really affects us as human beings. And so then, 5 years ago, I left and wanted to find something that had more meaning and was more of me. And I think that's the other thing too, is to each their own, no judgment at all. And I think many people have careers that maybe aren't their life's purpose necessarily, but they do things outside of work that give them a lot of fulfillment and purpose. And I think that's like completely fine, like no sweat if you feel content. For me, I think my work needs to like line up with who I want to be and what I want to do in the world. And so when I was doing things that weren't in alignment with what I believe and who I am, then your body's going to try and give you signals to say, hey, you might want to readjust. And that can show up as trouble sleeping or anxiety or repetitive thoughts. Your body is trying to communicate with you. It's telling you whether you're kind of living in sync or not. And so then, over these last 5 years, I've been doing much better, but, still ups and downs and lefts and rights. And the work I do is still stressful, but at least I love it and believe in it. And I've fallen off the wagon multiple times and have to kind of like catch myself and then pick a day and recommit to the things I know that help me. But I think it's just like part of being human, and it's not about getting to some end state where then all of a sudden everything's great, because that's not a realistic expectation. It's more you like learn these tools and you just get in a better habit of like using the tools when they're needed, and just like living differently, because life keeps coming at you. And I think there's some truth to this too, is like I think we're all put here to have some curriculum and learn things, and I've just found like if I learn and I'm doing well, sometimes I'll get a big challenge as a test. But now I don't necessarily like resist it. I kind of lean into it. Happen in life come through challenge and struggle, and so it's more of like cultivating a different mindset.
Yeah, it reminds me of the obstacle is the way, Marcus Aurelius, right? Like when we hit that level of maturation where it's like, oh, okay, this is how the game works.
Yeah.
And it's also in the yoga texts around raga and devesha. And devesha's, this is back in the kleshas. It's aversion versus grasping.
Yeah.
So raga's grasping, devesha's aversion, right? And it's like these are just these traps. So the obstacle is the way is like, oh great, like that's what the aversion, like go like that's dinner, like go into it, right? Digest that, and then what happens on the other side, potentially way more integrated, right? Mm-hmm. So you were just at the MAPS conference, and I'm curious, like what were some of the like your ahas or findings around just where the research is happening in psychedelics, and maybe what are some of the sort of breakthroughs in the overall psychedelic community?
Yeah, it's done every other year. It's the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, this pretty amazing org that was started by this guy by the name of Rick Doblin, who did his PhD at Harvard many years ago on how to take MDMA through the FDA and get it approved as a medicine. And then he went out and he's been working on that for his whole life. It's a pretty extraordinary story. MAPS brings together neuroscientists, mental health professionals. There's professional athletes there like Aaron Rodgers who've had benefit to playing sport from using these plants. Mike Tyson's a big proponent of psychedelics now. And then you have indigenous elders and leaders from communities all over the world. So it's one of the most kind of unique groupings of people I've ever seen. It's beautiful. And there's like some tension, there's different belief systems and how these plants should be used, but I think they do a good job of trying to create the space for there to be some good debate, and there to be some healthy discussion. And I left there quite inspired. I think that it's coming, it's happening, and I don't think there's any putting the genie back in the bottle. I think that the research is overwhelmingly clear. I mean, most well-respected institutions, Harvard, NYU, Berkeley, Yale, have specific psychedelic research initiatives because they've seen it. And so I think that it's coming, but we're still in the early days. And one extraordinary thing was Texas passed historic legislation for ibogaine to be used for PTSD and drug addiction. So 50 million allocation, and that was driven by conservative, kind of good old boy Republicans. So even in this super polarized world, you've got extreme left, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and extreme right, Dan Crenshaw, the conservative Republicans, saying we can at least work together on psychedelics for some of these specific use cases. So I'm like, this is great. Let's work together. So yeah, I'm really inspired by it. I think that psilocybin and MDMA are going to make it through the trials, and they'll be available from doctors for clinical indications, and that's super helpful and better than some of the options that we have now, particularly some of the more toxic ones that are barely better than placebo, if better than placebo. But then I also hope that the side of the industry working on the betterment of the well gets more acceptance, and you don't need to have complex PTSD to get a lot out of these experiences.
Yeah.
Back to some of the research around these experiences and improvements in creative problem solving, because it helps the brain work better. There's been research around the sense of awe. So you have that moment where you're like, wow, this life really is magical. You feel it in your body. These experiences help people have those experiences more often. And how cool is that? That's important. So I think that there'll be legalization for medical use, but I hope there's also thoughtful changes in regulation that allow people to have these experiences in a non-clinical environment, in nature, with groups, because I think it's a human right. Who is sometimes I get a little frustrated. It's who's the government to tell people that adults that they can't have these experiences? Now, we need to have some controls around it because, again, they're not for everyone. They need to be done in a certain way to reduce risk. But
yeah, but you can buy alcohol at the grocery store, right? It's
exactly.
You can buy nicotine,
sugar, all this preservative crap. So
yeah,
I
you can
agree.
have glyphosates on your bread. To me, there is this return to the citizen from the consumer, right? And the whole entheogen, to me, that whole entheogen movement is part of that, where we're decriminalizing it. To me, that is such a first step, and was wow, finally, just as someone who kind of grew up more in the rebellious entheogen culture in high school and college, where it was wow, it's this is amazing. And we were having breakthroughs really young and profound, which definitely there's no way I would have gone on I was very type A East Coast, good student, tri-sport athlete, very following the rules. Right. Could have ended up with you at McKinley, no doubt, right? Yeah. And it broke me into seeing planetary consciousness at a young age and devoting my life to the planet, to future generations at a young age, and into a very alternative path with confidence. With the confidence of knowing that I was counterculture, but that was all illegal was right. Really challenging. Yeah. And most of my friends, it's I just grew up more in the culture where everyone had a record, with these little petty things, but what a pain in the ass when alcohol's legal, vaping's legal, right. All of these psychotropics that are dumbing down consciousness, yeah. Rather than raising up consciousness. And to me, it's all goes back to the Romans and the bread and circuses and post-agricultural power, where it's we're going to shame you for doing that which is enlightening, so that we can have power over and control you, to turn you into a consumer, so we can control your preferences, and we can basically perpetuate a fear-based culture. And it's yep. That's been going on for a very long time.
Yep, it has been.
And that whole in my experience, it's the primal habits, one leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, and it's this unraveling of the cultural conditioning, right? So it's people do psychedelics, and then they might wake up to that they're overeating, and they understand that they're overeating or over drinking or smoking the wrong things.
Exactly.
Right? And it's just and that's why I would just sit in peace, and maybe just even sit in peace at the family table and be in unity consciousness at dinner time. something that was just totally not happening before. I'd say like on the more extreme side in our experimental communities, which I don't think that's found its way really into even like the more evolving psychedelic conversations, except for like, here and there I find it, which is urine therapy. Because when people who do urine therapy do psychedelics, they end up looping. And that to me is very fascinating from a microbiome standpoint, and the experience of nitric oxide and the nitrogen cycle and vasodilation. And, we hear these stories from the ancients around like, oh yeah, well they used to collect the pee, like people who used to do psychedelics collect the pee, and then like why? And it's not very well understood until we understand nitric oxide and the nitrogen cycle and the physiology. And of course there's no research on it. I don't expect there to be research on, again, you can't sell someone their own pee.
Yeah.
But to me, that's really a fascinating recovery of the primal habits of people who do urine therapy and do psychedelics. It's noteworthy. Citizen data to me is very noteworthy because it's like, well, what are people who already are very primal doing when they do psychedelics? And for them, fasting, right, where there's this, like they naturally are going into it with more intention, often more fasting before doing ceremony or ritual together. Very conscious eating, often a lot of wild plants, like those that have these habits before they go deeper into those habits with psychedelics. And I don't think that's casual data, like that level of like kind of cutting edge primal people.
Yeah, I agree.
But have you seen anything like that in terms of like this return to more of like a just natural intelligence in terms of like primal movement or
Definitely. I mean, we're encouraging people to investigate this, go inside, listen to the body, eat with the body. Once you get tuned to that, you have this like incredibly fascinating intuition that is in many ways more informed and more accurate than the thinking mind. So yeah, I mean, and we have many guests come through and then afterwards say they just don't feel like drinking anymore. They didn't have like a drinking problem before, but they're like, my body doesn't want it. I don't have any desire for it. So yeah, I think it really kind of, in some ways, kind of creates this clean slate, and then people can go out and be more thoughtful in their choices. It's less autopilot, There's a lot about.
Yeah, that's huge. Well, amazing. Really fun to just unpack what's going on at the Beckley Foundation and Beckley Retreats, and to see what I'd say what it sounds like just a more formal and researched and organized experience for people who might have like the most curiosity with the most apprehension.
Mm-hmm. That's our people. Yeah. Well, we'd love to invite you down sometime too, so keep us in mind.
Oh, I will. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm sure the Wellness Pros listening will get a lot out of just, understanding maybe what's happening, in the greater community. Because they, it's like you hear things, and I'd say like a lot of people in the yoga world, they can hear things of like, their students going on these ayahuasca retreats or whatnot, and many will have like a sense of like, oh, that's checking out and not really doing the real work. So any advice for those wellness pros that may have that bias?
Well, I guess just listen to your intuition, and I don't know, for some people that are really analytically driven, I think, and it's fair too, it's like, don't take my word for it. Go read some of the research.
Yeah.
Look at what's happening in the brain, understand it, like the toxicity. There's tons of resources out there. There's actually a really cool docu-series, the How to Change Your Mind, Michael Pollan's book, and then the series. Like, I think those are really good. Just like plain language. It's not so crazy to do these experiences. We've just kind of told ourselves that for a long time, and now we're unlearning some of those perceptions.
Yeah. And then in terms of microdosing, I'm just curious, like, do you find that many of your retreat participants end up microdosing or not?
Most people, I just have a call after this, so let me just send a note real quick. So microdosing is interesting. So I believe that microdosing is beneficial, particularly if it's paired with meditation or time in nature. I think it can open that up more. Now, the research that we have to date shows there's pretty clear benefit on larger doses like what we do, but that microdosing is no better than placebo. I just think we don't have enough data and we don't have the right data. Like, man, the way that you can kind of skew data a million different ways as a mathematician, like there's lies, damn lies, and statistics is the saying so I just think we don't have enough. I use microdosing and I think it's helpful for me, but everybody's different too. That's the thing with medicine that's hard, is we're all so wildly complex and our environments are different, and we're we change over time. So what might be super helpful at one point in time might not be helpful later, and it's different between individuals. So it's just, that's why it's good to develop the internal compass and the intuition, because that's going to be the better answer. Like, no doctor is going to be able to tell you definitively, what's good for you. They can give you some patterns and they can make some recommendations, but then you got to feel into what's working.
Right back to Svadhyaya, self-study. Awesome, Neil. Well, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed it. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
See ya.
All right, you guys. Hello, listeners. So I have created for the wellness pros out there who listen to this show, the Wellness Pro Launchpad, and I'll get you in for free. Just go to wellnesspro.academy /launchpad, LAUNCHPAD, Launchpad, and then just fill out the form and we'll get you right into this school classroom in here. And in the Launchpad, it's really cool. Like, you get to see yourself as the hero in the path of the wellness pro, and then your client's transformation and A to B, and your vibe and your brand, your investment story, and design the journey for your clients, patients, or students, and then how to price from results. So these lessons are super short. They're each about 10 minutes, and you'll have a reframe on how to launch and scale the next phase of your wellness career. So wellnesspro.academy /launchpad, and then and on the inside, if you really want to launch, you can, like, your next phase of growth as a wellness pro, then you can talk to me. See you soon.